We've got this older people's housing needs, and I think that's really important. I do recall that in the Greater Norwich Plan, I think just in our area, there's a 3,000 shortfall of homes for active retirement, and it isn't just about care homes. It's, you know, some of us like, well, when I reach Paul's august age, I'm sure I'll want to be spending more time on the golf course as well. Okay. And I'm sure that lately departed Alan Gom, who is replaced this time by, I think, Peter Germany. Welcome to you. Hopefully Alan's on the golf course as well, enjoying his active retirement. No, he's not, is he, Richard? What's he doing?
He's still rebuilding his house.
Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, we've also got a meeting, a presentation from Andrew Summers on Transport East, and then we'll get into the GRAMs, where I think we've all come to an accommodation we can all live with there, so that's good. So without, and apologies, we're not meeting in person. Neenan spoke to me the other day, and I think entirely sensible that we're meeting online, so there we are. Good. So Neenan, apologies, can you just take us through those, please?
Yeah, so we have apologies from Councillor Lawn, we have apology from Councillor Brian Long, we have an apology from Keith Moore, and we have apology from Melanie Vigo de la Galidori from the Broad Authority, but we have a substitute in the shape of Tim Jekyll representing the Broad Authority.
Okay, and have we received, I don't see Graham Plant on the call, is Graham, has he dipped out?
No, we haven't had an apology. I don't think I've had an apology from Councillor Plant, so he may join us later.
Good.
I'll check.
Right, okay. Well, without further ado, in that case, can I, well, what minutes and matters arising, can I just take those as read? I've been through them, they seem to be in order. Good, right. Let's get on to Transport East. Andrew Summers. So your background says you're Sport East, but I think it probably means I can't quite see all your video, but Transport East, over to you, Andrew. Let us know how we're all working together as planning authorities on that. Over to you.
Brilliant. Morning, John, and morning, everyone. Good to see you all again. Yeah, so apologies about the background. It should definitely be Transport East. So I'm here today to give you a quick update on the transport strategy for the East public consultation. You may recall I met all of you a few months ago at Long Stratton. When we met, we spent a good hour then talking through the issues and challenges for Norfolk in the context of the Transport East strategy, and thank you for that. That was extremely valuable in informing the draft strategy. We're now at the next stage of that process. So the aim of today is to give you a short presentation on the update of where we are with the public consultation and offer any support in terms of you all responding to that. We're very keen to make sure that colleagues that are aware of the public consultation launch. I met with Norfolk leaders and Norfolk chief execs over the last few weeks. You should have all received an email newsletter and possibly some of you attended a briefing event, but please do get in contact if you haven't had that. And also to note that on this group, you do have direct representations on Transport East, so Councillor Graham Plant and officers Trevor Wiggett and David Gleeson. So making sure that we are genuinely getting your views across to the wider Transport East partnership. So just to very quickly give you an update on the launch of the public consultation. I'll start off by recapping, I think, what I said back in the summer, and we talked through this. The aim of the partnership's draft transport strategy. This is very much about getting our voice heard as a single voice to government and making sure that we have a coherent strategy. We've had a number of meetings with Baroness Fear, who's the minister that oversees subnational transport bodies, and very clear messages coming back. We need to develop a transport strategy for this part of the world and prioritise investment and advise the Secretary of State on what the East needs to make sure it's fully achieving our goals going forwards. DfT have funded us to do this piece of work off the back of the local contributions that have come forward from yourselves and others. So we have a great opportunity here to make the case for investment in the East. set out a clear evidence base, a compelling case for investment, and a strategy going forwards. So just to let you know where we are with regard to that process, this sets out the fact that we're about 3/4 of the way through. So over the last year, we're developing an evidence base, and we did extensive engagement over the summer and the autumn, including with yourselves, on what you would want to see in that strategy. Last week, we went out with the launch of our public consultation. That's running from the 2nd of December until the 30th of January. 3 things we're focusing on there. So the draft transport strategy, a draft investment and delivery programme, an integrated sustainability appraisal. And what we're aiming for in the spring is to finalise that, understand the responses coming back from both public and partners, and get the strategy submitted to the Secretary of State. Just to recap on the engagement that's gone into this so far, a lot of work over the last year, and thank you to all of you, because I think all of you have been involved in this process. So from both the Forum and Senior Officers Group, which run the day-to-day work of Transport East, we've had partner strategy workshops, we had the summit, we did a public survey, pre-consultation survey of 600 people. Importantly, we spoke to the MPs, we had a really good MP roundtable, and spoken to the East of England APPG, including meeting them down in Parliament a few weeks ago, to make sure that MPs are fully on board with this. And Dr. Dan Poulter, MP, is our lead parliamentary ambassador, who's now been asking questions in the House around this strategy. Ports roundtable and various meetings with partners. So I think, thank you very much to all of you that inputted into this. In terms of what's come back, it's clear that people want to see the East driving the UK economy. And I think John, you and others made the point early on that we need to be really seen as not an island, but actually driving the UK economy here, and making sure that our strengths are coming through, and therefore the needs of our transport system are embedded within that. So the key themes that have come back through the early engagement, the fact we have a strong, innovative and diverse economy, but potentially held back by some of our transport infrastructure. We're a global gateway for trade. Over half of the UK's freight containers come through our ports, end up in the Midlands and the North, that actually flow through our region. Our energy sector growing, both onshore and offshore, and that is going to be a key part of our economy going forward, and also the major housing and jobs growth that we're taking. And our MPs were particularly keen to focus on that housing and jobs growth, and the fact that we need the infrastructure to support that. Major transport challenges flowing out of that. We've done a lot of work around carbon emissions, and the challenges in particular around a freight base and a largely rural economy such as ours. Our solutions might be a bit different to other places. Poor connectivity and congestion, particularly between our 75 towns and cities, but also to other major destinations in the UK, London, Cambridge, the Midlands, the North. How do we better connect our economies to those? Rural and coastal accessibility came through incredibly strongly, particularly from partners here. And I think that the Norfolk Leaders meeting I went to the other week, there were a number of comments around the need for our strategy to focus on that. And accessing international gateways as well come through incredibly strong. We have 13 ports, not only the 2 free port zones, but a range of other regional ports and 3 international airports. And we have a significant role in supporting wider UK trade. And that's one of the things we're getting across to DfT, who have made global Britain as one of their priorities as well. So just to very quickly recap on the transport strategy and the draft transport strategy as well that's gone out. We've set a vision and 4 priorities, and this is what it's based on. So when you go into the consultation material, I'm not going to run it through it here, but you will see a case for investment that's set around that vision. And then those 4 strategic priorities were broken down into goals and actions. And under each of those, we proposed strategic actions to really make sure that we're achieving decarbonisation to net zero, connecting those growing towns and cities, energising coastal and rural communities, and really bringing to the fore the need for government and ourselves to work in partnership to invest in those, and unlocking our international gateways. Just a couple more slides just to bring through some of the other key themes that are coming in. Should probably note that within the strategy, and as I spoke to you in the summer, a series of strategic corridors to connect our region, both within the region and to other parts of the UK. We're proposing to focus on these as areas where major road and rail improvements will need to take place over the next 30 years. And 4 of those of particular interest to this partnership that flow into Norfolk, and that's come through the engagement and consultation we've had with yourselves. Also should note out that government are very keen for us to put forward an investment and delivery programme, set out our priorities. What we've done is identified 55 projects across the region at varying stages of development. Some are primed for delivery, some are ideas that we know we need accelerating, particularly around things such as electric vehicle charging and others. To get them into a process by which government can clearly understand what our priorities are. This has worked well in other regions, and other regions are getting the benefits of this type of pipeline approach. We've seen through the spending review, the North and the Midlands in particular, whilst they also have a lot of political reasons why they've got that additional investment, they have mobilised themselves around a plan and a pipeline. And so we need to make sure that we have this in place for the East. So, in terms of the public consultation, launched last week, it's an online consultation. There's a portal there. Please do go and take a look. We have the draft strategy, the investment programme, in various formats, so both summary version that's probably easier for the public to understand, and then more detailed transport strategy, which you and your officers might want to take a look through. A virtual online exhibition, you see the picture there, you can go in and have a look at that. There's a video animation as well, which you can use and also share with partners. And we're also hosting some public online webinars over the next month to make sure the public are aware. So far, we've had about 85 responses to the consultation, which has been really good. Obviously, on for another 7 weeks, and we're aiming for significantly more than that. The focus of the consultation is very much on understanding the level of support for the strategy and the delivery plan. This is going to be part of our single voice to government, but also genuinely understanding any areas for improvement or change in the strategy. So this is not completed by any means, and very keen to see areas where you might want to improve it going forwards. And as I said earlier, please do get in contact if you need any help or support with regards to responding to that. So next steps. I said earlier, we are 3/4 of the way through the process. We are aiming to wrap up the consultation report in February, March time, and then we have a process by which we need to understand what the final strategy looked like, what has come out of the consultation, and then make sure that we can get that final strategy to the DFT. So that's the point we're at the minute. John, I'm going to stop presenting now. Very happy to take any questions, and also just sort of genuinely offer support for anyone that wants to know more about it, and any help that your organisations might want in a formal response. I'll pause there and hand over back to you, please.
Okay, well, I don't see anyone who's put their hands up in the chat, so I've prepared 2 questions. Okay. Last night I was watching Look East, and there was a huge celebration in Cambridgeshire because Soham Station has reopened on the King's Lynn to Cambridge line. And I was told, the report said it cost £20 million to have this new station at Soham. And also, but in order to get it 2-way, because it's only 1 way at the moment, apparently, they were going to have to spend £500 million at Ely Junction. Well, dear, oh dear. I remember when Liz Truss and George Freeman were banging the drum for this a few years, and it was like 20 or 30 million just to have a little bypass loop at Ely Junction. And given the importance, which Andrew, you correctly said about the importance of speeding exports through Felixstowe and commuting Norwich to Cambridge in an hour, every hour, and also for our colleague like Richard Blunt, who's interested in getting the fast line to London via Cambridge, how on earth has the Ely Junction proposition inflated from 20 to 25 million quid up to £500 million? Because it just seems extraordinary. And given that the maps and everything you've presented, it's a critical part of what we need to have for transport, but it's almost like they've purposely put it out of reach for us. Over to you.
Yeah, no, this has come through strongly from, I think you've said this in the past, and many other people. And the more you delay transport schemes, the more expensive they get, and we just need to crack on with it. We in the strategy it's one of the priorities within the strategy. We've emphasised this. We have proposed in the strategy a rail plan that, I guess, if you see that the North and the Midlands, the integrated rail plan that they have has attracted £96 billion worth of investment in the Midlands and the North. Our view at Transport East, and the forum discussed this a few weeks ago, is that we don't have that strategic plan for rail that really sets out the benefits of a coherent network that brings everything together. So one of the things in this strategy is it's both focused on that project as fundamental to unlocking the freight routes, but also passenger routes as well, but also a rail plan for the region. We discussed this yesterday at the forum. A number of people were there, where we need to have a long-term rail plan, and then you can start to make the strategic case. When you look at that Ely junction, it's very hard to make the case for a £1 billion scheme, but when you start to think about the network in the east and the benefits the whole network provides when you think about it together, and you look at what the Midlands and the North have done with their integrated rail plan, which is £96 billion, actually this can start to stack up. But the problem is there's a sense that things like this get picked off, and actually having a more coherent plan for the whole of the East is where the strategy is starting to go. So I agree, and many partners agree with you, John, that we need a more coherent case for this, and I think the strategy is definitely going to be a basis for doing that.
Good. Richard, over to you.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand because Ely has been on the cards for such a long time, actually, and at the end of the day, we know it is the blocking point. Yeah. It's the crossing point from east to west, from north to south. All the traffic goes through that junction. If you want to go from Norwich to Liverpool, you go through that junction. If you want to go from Stansted up to Manchester, you go through that junction. All the Felixstowe traffic, once the container traffic goes there, it doesn't make any sense why it's been neglected. And we're desperate to get some real money to this. Yeah. And if we'd done it several years ago when we really wanted to, it would have cost a lot less. And I think I agree totally with John. It doesn't make any sense. And the more we delay it, the more it's going to cost. And if we don't do it, we won't have a strategic rail infrastructure for East Anglia, because it is this point.
Well done, Richard. You echoing my thoughts. Before I come to you, Tim, I mean, those of you know I've been around a long time, and I'm a big proponent of devolution. And there's an iteration of devolution coming round at the moment, and it's sort of talking about county deals and this and that. But I think it's astonishing that everything we've just spoken about, none of it is in the Norfolk county deals proposition to government. It is preposterous. And so many of the links that we've got, and so rather than just stand in the queue and say, oh, we've got to have a county deal, otherwise we'll be left out, we need to be ensuring, as planning authorities, as well as significantly important people looking, because it's our job to look at the future, that some of these things are baked in to low carbon infrastructure and things like that. And a county deal shouldn't just be about backfilling social care cuts, important though that is. We've got to be thinking for the future and low carbon and everything else, and personal mobility and stuff. So, Andrew, certainly from my perspective, but I think it's echoed by Richard, we need to bring these things from the fore, and any devolution deal must include all these issues. And I think the commonality between ourselves and Suffolk from the evidence you've pursued today is really important. And Norfolk as an island probably isn't going to be able to cut the mustard, otherwise we'll get picked off again. But there we are, Tim. That was a bit of politics there, but there we are. Over to you, Tim.
Right, thank you very much. I thought that was really interesting, Andrew. The only point I would add to what you were saying is, in addition to industry and freight flowing through the region, tourism is really important to this region. And if we're going to have green tourism, we need a really connected infrastructure so people have the confidence for that. So I just add to your list of important priorities is that idea of tourism and green tourism when we can do that. Thanks.
Okay, Richard, was that a new hand or?
Yeah, that's a new hand. Just a question for Andrew. Can you keep us up to date with all the webinars and all the different events, so that make sure we can, because I have a lot of, I'm sure everybody in there has a lot of contacts who can actually put that to several people to make sure they get involved. So can you make sure we're all kept up to date with all the different events that are going on in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you an email after this with the details.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Chairman. First off, agree with everything that you said thus far. The only extra thing that I would like to add, please, and said this before, is how are you going to influence the electric companies? Both of them, the power generators and the distributors, because we've just got so many black holes in my district alone. We can't build in many areas because of that. And if we are going to go to the green electric revolution, there are just too many black holes, and you're going to need to influence the others very, very. You just are. That's my point. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, Andrew, I think we've nearly exhausted the questions, but I've got one more, and that is a lot of what you've put forward is very hard infrastructure stuff. It's transport, it's building projects, a lot of concrete, a lot of stone, a lot of steel. But what I haven't heard is about, that's the hardware, so to speak. What about the software? What about the people and passenger transport? Because one option I think we really should be considering, and again, it's not something you can really do on a Norfolk basis. It's something which would have to work on a much larger commuting canvas. Is say an Oyster card for the East that works on the buses as well as the trains. Why should only London, Singapore, Hong Kong, and New York, just to give some examples, have this sort of integrated transport package? And if only we had the ability to hop off the train and now through ticketing and daily caps and licensing, which you can get with a card, we might make Andrew, what's his name, Jonathan Denby's trains, new Greater Anglia trains, work even harder, because on the Norwich to Cambridge route, you've got a 2-carriage train, now a 4-carriage train, and each of the carriages has more people than the old ones. We need to be filling those, but we're not going to do it unless we can entice more people and make it more convenient, and integrate there. So I didn't really see that on your presentation, but getting people about is as much as interesting as just having more things to put the people on. Yeah, no, absolutely. It wasn't in the presentation, but within the strategy, there's a strong goal around integrating transport. And I'll send you the links afterwards, but that is a focus. We don't have, as you say, integrated ticketing for the East. Like a London Oyster card, or indeed the system that the North are now developing. And there's a strong proposal in there for integrated ticketing for the whole of potentially the whole of the East of England region, which we'd like to get people's views on. But there seems to be a lot of support for that. As you say, it's not only integration between individual modes, but integration between the whole system. So buses, trains, rapid transit, if that's a thing on the future and then the final mile as well, as you come out of the station, integrating it with your end-to-end journey. It's fundamental within the strategy. I appreciate it wasn't a focus here, but it's definitely within there. I know the chair, Transport East, talked about it yesterday at our meeting, and very, very keen for that to happen as well. Good. Okay, so and again, that's something for a DEVA deal we should be pushing for, and it needs to be on a bigger canvas, but there we are. Right, okay, so Andrew, and I'm not seeing anyone else sort of jumping up and down, so thank you for your attendance today. That's a really useful update. Of course, we all have to work together on future plans and what have you. So I think if we could, I'm sensing for the minutes that we thank you for that. A greater emphasis on Ely Junction and that sort of thing, as it demonstrates in so many ways, from King's Lynn to London, from Norwich to Cambridge, and also from the Midlands to Felixstowe, is it is that central bottleneck, and also an appreciation of passenger transport. Andrew, thank you for that update. Right, thank you very much. We didn't get bogged down in the Western Link. No. I was expecting Graham to laugh at that, but he didn't. So. Unless you just want to give us a brief update at this timely moment, Graham.
There is no bogs in the Western Link that we have to go through, so it's quite good. Just rivers and trees.
Good, lovely. Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew. And we now move on to item number 4 with Jessamy Hayes, and it's something there. but I think I know this is probably not your words, Jessamy, but the words elderly housing aren't really very helpful. So if I can just sort of frame it there, because nowadays people can take early retirement at 55. 60 is no age. In fact, 65 is no age anymore, and there's a continuum of housing that is active retirement. There's supported living, and eventually you may need to be in care homes. So just to say elderly puts that mental picture of those ghastly day centres with urine-soaked cushions that stink. And our senior citizens deserve a better future than that. And as planning authorities, I think we need to be thinking much more about, senior living, active retirement, than just calling it elderly housing. But that's just my view. Again, another bit of politics. What do you say?
Well, Councillor Fuller, I assume you're handing over to me. So I just want to say welcome to everybody while I've got my camera on. I am going to turn it off while I share my screen to protect my broadband. And I 100% agree with that. You have taken me just concentrate while I do this. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm suffering from not being able to talk whilst sharing. Hang on, let me go. Perfect. Could you just give me a nod to say you can see my screen?
Yeah, we've got that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to present on housing. As Councillor Fuller has always stolen this part for me, I know I'm on the agenda as elderly, but hopefully that's not a word you will hear me use either, because older certainly does not mean over, but later life well lived. And plus, my mum would turn the air blue if I referred to her like that, as I hope lots of your relatives would as well, for exactly the same reason. So my name is Jessamy Hayes, and I'm the manager of 2 capital programmes in Norfolk County Council, which facilitate the development of specialist housing for older people and working age adults. And I'd just like to name check my colleague Sarah Hall, the Assistant Director of Housing and Capital Programmes, is also here in this meeting to support this presentation. So kind of today, I have a bit of a dual purpose. Firstly, to set the scene for housing for older people in Norfolk, to provide context ahead of the technical detail and what are quite big numbers in the report, which is due in early 2022. It is a report that we welcomed. It's been commissioned by all Norfolk district councils and the county council for this model demand for 2041 for local plans. I have to kind of acknowledge up here that there is a wide market in each housing category, from the affluent to the affordable. And I'm not intending to draw down into that detail here. We simply don't have time. And kind of importantly, the benefits that I'm going to talk about are the same, and there is need across all types. The second purpose I'm going to briefly make you aware of today is the programme that Norfolk County Council has to support affordable extra care. And kind of to be clear, that's my role in the County Council. I am delighted to be here to talk about older people's housing in general, because I think it's very important, but I also do have this very specific role within the County Council that's a bit of a subset of a subset. So if you go and talk to most people, this is how they understand their housing options. You have a family home, and then at some point, for some people, it may become inevitable to have to sell up and move into residential care. And who really wants to move into a care home unless they really have to? Kind of less well known are the 2 housing options that sit in the middle. They have these technical names of sheltered housing and extra care. In reality, they come in different shapes and sizes for different pockets. Now, this diagram here, I am not suggesting that everyone should be moving into them, just that they are options, as well as staying in the family homes with adaptations and technology. So kind of extra care and sheltered can often look the same from the outside, but there are some key differences. So both sheltered and extra care are housing. You remain as a homeowner or tenant, and it's apartments, houses or bungalows, and they have various communal facilities, but only one has care and support on site 24/7. Peace of mind for residents and their families. The care and support is often flexible. You don't have to have needs to move in, or you might have low needs, but crucially, the support is there on site for peace of mind, such as the fall at night, as well as kind of as you grow older, may need a helping hand. Compared to sheltered, extra care as well as often larger sites. Usually 60 to 70 is the minimum unit size to make it work, and it often comes with more communal facilities. I mean, there are some larger extra care villages in the UK which have almost 300 units. And then you'll hear me keep saying this, residential care, it is not housing, it is not your home, and it's often just an ensuite room. Absolutely, it has a place for high needs and nursing care, and it's a really valuable part of our sort of ecosystem, but is not the place to move to just because you might need a bit of extra support as you grow older. Kind of the other part, whilst extra care and sheltered housing, these are the technical names, the real world has this type of housing under different umbrellas. Now, some of it is it's a branding exercise, it's historical, but I don't think it helps it from a planning point of view, as it can make it feel really nebulous that there's like this multiverse of different names for what in its kind of bare bones is exactly the same thing. So kind of why should we care about these housing options? Oh, there is lots and lots of research into extra care. Various studies are all showing the same kind of thing, that all these health and well-being benefits because someone is living in housing, perhaps better suited to their mobility needs, housing which is easier to heat and maintain, and crucially that residents are part of a community yet still living privately in their own home. So what about the numbers? So there's something we're increasingly hearing about called the hidden housing market. In the UK, compared to the USA and Australia and New Zealand, is way behind in how it provides housing for later life. Of course, this can be an element of challenge in this, and are we comparing apples with pears? But when you take these statistics to the over 75s, the gap between the countries is even bigger. So it's kind of telling us something. But how do the numbers look when we sort of move to England? So sadly, Norfolk is lagging behind both the English average and its family group of comparable counties. Now, I kind of do note that since these statistics, there has been a few McCarthy Stone Retirement Plus private developments in Norfolk, and there is an affordable scheme with Housing 21 open in Fakenham too. So the picture is improving. And I'd also like to draw your attention to the national market research, noting two of the factors about why people move relate to this 24/7 support on site, something that extra care has, suggesting that the offer is desirable. Again, not saying that everyone should be moving into extra care, but that kind of currently in Norfolk, we're not giving enough people the choice. We have lots of care homes, but as far as I know, no one actively wants to move into one. So does Norfolk have this hidden housing market? So this is just a snapshot of a particular day where home care services were being delivered. The reality is the number is bigger, but I'm using this just to illustrate that there are lots of people living in the community, receiving support who you don't necessarily naturally see. We also know that Norfolk has a higher than average proportion of over 65s who live alone in their own home. And the particular population of the sort of 85 to 100 is also set to be more significant in the coming years. So there are lots of people who potentially could benefit from the opportunity to consider extra care as a housing option. So that's it in a very fast nutshell about why the numbers for extra care might seem like some pretty big numbers when they come through the demand sausage machine. The reality is the starting point is quite low for Norfolk. So kind of now just a few minutes on the second part, which is about my role, my job in the County Council, is two capital contribution programmes where we offer a proportion of capital towards an affordable development to help get it over the line. Extra care has a lot of communal space, which makes it particularly expensive. So we have two. Independent living is for extra care, but I did want to use this opportunity to also make the case and sort of flag the equally as important supported living, which covers a variety of housing for working age adults. Independent living brings jobs, multi-million-pound developments, and will count towards housing targets. A few minutes on why we called it independent living and not extra care. I mean, we don't deny that these terms exist, and we're not trying to deny that, but people have not heard of extra care, and when they do, the name puts them off. We haven't invented the term independent living, as it's a term that a couple of housing associations in Norfolk already use instead of extra care, and it's around in other councils and other areas too. So we just picked it out of the basket. It's also important because it helps the people think about it positively, and we don't want people to be put off simply because of a name. So a couple of things as a programme. Our first scheme opened with Housing 21. It's been shortlisted for a couple of awards. I went there last week and it was really lovely to meet some of the residents who were popping in and out as we were there, some taking their dogs for walks, and be really delighted and happy to arrange visits if anyone would like when it's appropriate in the new year. To give you a sense of the sizes, this is the show home for the 2-bedroom apartments. I'm just going to say the corridors and the bedroom really are as generous as they look. This is not a camera angle, and obviously there's various bits of technology. Each apartment has its own like video-like iPad screen, which has a variety of features around security, alerts and alarms, and being able to communicate with staff and the other residents. The second scheme in Acle. Now, the show home for this should be open by summer 2022. Again, we'd be delighted to arrange visits once that's open. And it's a really exciting scheme. It's got a fabulous location right in the heart of the community. So where else are we doing it? So this is a bit of a current snapshot of where we think we are. It is absolutely subject to lots of change and churn. Some forces are beyond our control, especially where private land is concerned, and kind of planning authorities and planning policy can really help. Kind of a question, I've left kind of colours away from this map, because I think it's more appropriate to private conversations with officers, but kind of how does it feel as a programme? And it's challenging, and it's around things that you'll be really familiar with, land availability. So as a programme, be assured, we are pursuing with different partners opportunities everywhere all the time. And I know probably some colleagues in this room who are working in those areas who have been continually helpful will also recognise me talking about a land shortage. You know, we need about 2 to 3 acres in communities with good access and all good access to transport. And it would be great to see local plan policies that start to recognise, okay, extra care housing specifically, but crucially not bundle it with care homes as though getting a care home in your area is a kind of realistic alternative for local people over extra care. Care homes have a role for higher needs and shorter stays, but they are just not the same. So the recap on benefits helps the system, people's well-being. Yes, there are financial savings. It's how we make the case for investment. There's a bit of a hidden housing market question, and there is developmental value to each scheme. This is an extract here from Meadow Walk. This is an example of some residents who first moved in, an example of both the carer and the cared for benefiting from moving somewhere where there is support on site at hand if you need it for peace of mind. So to kind of finish, obviously, I would love it if everyone in this meeting goes into 2022 being an advocate for kind of specialist housing of all tenures. We know that it goes right through the market, recognising the benefit that it brings, and consider how local plans could ensure kind of independent living and supported living, maybe with policies that allocate land, and this crucial thing about separating this older people's housing from care homes, because and see it as a way of being integral to placemaking for communities. So that's kind of it. Thank you for your time listening. I know I've rattled through quite big topics in a very high level, and just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a healthy and happy 2022.
Okay, sorry, my phone rang halfway through that. I do apologise for that. Good. So I think what we've seen there from you, Jessamy, is a good sort of example there of, if you like, a continuum of an evolution of people's needs, and as they transform from active participation in the economy, perhaps, as to active retirement, healthy lifestyles, and also potentially, ultimately, into significant more levels of health. I know that in the Greater Norwich area, we've got, I think, 3,188, I think was the number that went in the plan. That's, if somebody can correct me if that's wrong, but I do know that in our local plan, we haven't recognised those numbers at all in terms of allocating land to meet that need, and so I just wonder at some stage, when are we going to be required to be much more determinative about bungalows, for example, and why is it that only flattered type developments and very intensive uses there? I mean, I know, and I'm sure Paul Clausen would declare an interest if he was on the screen, but you got take, for example, Barnum Broom Golf Club, where they've got a hotel operation, there's chambermaids, there's a restaurant, there's golf and everything else. Smaller type bungalows in that sort of leisure type thing, when people got a lot more time on their hands, ought to be there. But the planners, by and large, say, "Oh, well, that's unsustainable. It's too far away from a doctor's surgery." What about the pressure on local schools? Well, I've got news to them. If you're over 65, you're probably not going to create any more pressure on local schools, but unless the planners know better. So, where's this? How are you seeing the tension between the obvious need to deliver more and the instinctive need, sort of view of planners? Well, you can only do this in sustainable locations and not really have choice in the market, because you may well be, people move around.
So I think I just want to pick up on your first bit, and some of that is the reflection on the brevity that we had to kind of chop through in terms of these technical names. And I think extra care and sheltered, we could take you on a virtual journey to much more affluent schemes that are mixtures of bungalows and bits, and have those kind of more leisure activities. I think we get into the affordable end, and we do have some coming through where there are a mix of bungalows. It's incredibly expensive is some of the reason that dictates why you will find where we have affordable schemes that tend to be sort of larger flattered developments. And I think some of the question around how local plans can allocate land, I think that would be a challenge that I'd throw back out to planners and have a discussion around that in terms of how best to achieve multiple needs and achieve these things, because they will of course be compromise. But what I think we are clear about on some bits, particularly for the group that is that 85 to 100, of which there will be a significant proportion and still be very active, you do need to accept that people will perhaps have less access to cars and need to be in locations where they can access transport.
Yeah, and it's about, okay, so what about the age 65 to 85, I guess? John Toy, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for that, just for me. Yeah, firstly, Fakenham, I've been to Meadow Walk. That's obviously in my area, and it's fantastic. It's a great piece of stuff, and everybody that's been involved with that, I'm pleased to see it's up for some awards. So thank you for that. It's a good example of what can be done. Having said that, some of the things that John's been saying about locational stuff and sustainability and what people want, I've personally, as a ward member, I've got 9 villages. And there are people that have lived there all their life, don't want to be in town, okay? And I think that there is a message with the map that you showed, where people, that snapshot of a day where people were getting assistance, that actually should be reflected in the transport strategy, because we've got these people living out there needing care. Not all of them will get into care homes, yet they don't have access to cars. So there's a whole tie-up with the transport strategy. So yes, I agree with John that we need to consider the sort of in-between, spaces where people are in the countryside, if you like, supporting one another with bungalows and other activities around, as well as the great work that you're doing. And hopefully we're going to get some more in
There's-
Norfolk as well. You know, we've got some more that we're hoping to bring along. So yeah, I just wanted to spread it out a little bit beyond the great things that we're doing, but you know, agreeing with John that there perhaps are other options that we can consider. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's, and I think Jessamine, I think if I may, nobody is denying that 85 to 100 year cohort is in greatest need and needs to be, you know, in potentially more communal situations, but there shouldn't, I think we need, it's too easy for planners, and I'll say this from the chair, you know, to compartmentalize people and to direct how people should live their lives. I think we're not living in a sort of command economy. We should provide choice, and it's choice from 55 to 75, 65 to 85, and you know, as people have more leisure time and do take early retirement, and actually in many cases have a blended retirement, potentially with additional childcare responsibilities as their children, you know, look after their children's kids. It doesn't naturally fall into the command economy. I think that's probably, you know, when we're doing our local plans, we do need to recognise that. But Graham, you're coming in.
Yeah, I think it's about capacity, John, and where this can actually happen and what the demand is from the people who we're talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, we've seen a map of the world of how capacity in other areas have been increased dramatically to enable people to go into a living accommodation that is suitable for them at their particular time of life and their care needs. But in Norfolk, we are disparate about that. We haven't put it in our local plans. We haven't seen it as a full Norfolk issue. We've seen it as a district issue, and we're trying in districts to try and fit in our local plans where these areas could be possibly sited. I think it's really difficult to try and do that if you haven't got an overall strategy and an overall plan to put people in the places they want to be in throughout Norfolk. And it's a very disparate situation. When I say disparate, I mean it's a very spread out issue in Norfolk. In Norfolk, we have a lot of rural areas where people want to retain their rurality and they want to live out their lives in the rural scene. They don't want to live in a townscape. They want to live in a rural scape. So from that point of view, understanding how you spread out the need across Norfolk and how you fulfil that need, there's got to be an overall strategy rather than just 7 different districts working out what they need for their particular district. So an overall strategy would be useful, and then how you fit that into a local plan once you've decided where the need is and how you're going to fulfill it. And to be honest with you, you're not going to get many private sector bodies wanting to build these kind of facilities because they don't see a return on them. So it may well be that it's the public that does it, or the I can put it, arm's length building bodies from districts or from county that would build out these kind of facilities for people. And it is a facility, it is a need met. So from that point of view, you don't need to understand across the county how that would fit together. And otherwise, how would you make it all work? It does need an overall strategy and an overall view of where the need is.
Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Now, so Jessamine, have you got any information on where the Australia is particularly what's in my mind, the impact of the family unit staying cohesive? Because we have some very good friends our sort of age who are still looking after their elderly parents, and it's very, very much centered around family and community. And I feel and fear that in this country that's been evaporated a bit for whatever reason. I just wondered if you had that, because we hear great stuff about Portugal, for example. And so is there a correlation between those figures, or is there none? And I'm agreeing pretty much with everything I'm hearing about the rurality. And all I would say, Chairman, that the site you mentioned does come under your planning authority. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, and which is why, and we did receive an interest there. And so my challenge back to Graham is, you know, when a limited proposal for a small number of, if you like, active retirement bungalows was mooted, some of the statutory consultees in highways and education said what an unsustainable location it was. So we can have all the strategies in the world, but I do think this is a really important thing about probably a quarter of our total population is going to fall into this because we're an aging population in Norfolk, or an older population. And knee-jerk responses from highways or education saying, well, no, the countryside is an unsustainable location, probably isn't allowing the private sector to develop what needs to happen in the mix. And that's not a denial to say that you shouldn't build in market towns like Diss and Harleston, where McCarthy and Stone have just announced 2 developments. That's great and to be welcomed and encouraged, but not everybody wants to live in the town. And we do have to have a continuum. And, you know, like I say, the propensity for some old people to want to get around is less, and they certainly don't put the pressure on schools as education sometimes thinks. Jessamy, how are you making progress with some of your county colleagues in responding to some of these proposals that come forward and preventing the knee-jerk responses?
So I think, I mean, one of the broad things that we will always kind of recognize that options and opportunity are key, and people of Norfolk, kind of that broad bit about having different options, because there is not a cookie cutter model, and different providers that perhaps hit different parts of the market have a different perspective and a different set of financial equations that can make different areas work for them. So I think there is a lot of variety in what I've generalized into kind of 2 categories, and I don't want to kind of get that away. And it's about giving people that opportunity to have choice. There are restrictions on or challenges in affordable, because there is a certain amount of massing in terms of unit numbers to make it work, and, you know, different providers have a different opinion about why things will work in certain areas. So in terms of a program, we recognize that need, we acknowledge that the numbers go beyond affordable, and we aim to kind of support those proposals in terms of numbers of need, and hope to have sort of healthy conversations, because we certainly don't want to be putting anything out there that stunts development, because we think giving people in Norfolk the opportunity to live in different types of housing so they can stay independent for as long as possible is key. Okay,
good. Well, I think we've exhausted the questions. I suppose the last point to say is addressing Graham's good challenge, which is, we need to know where it is. Do you have an idea of the distribution within Norfolk, or where there's hotspots of demands are, so we can inform our local plans? I mean, it may well be that in due course, and it may be for this group to have some supplementary planning guidance, or SPDs, that talk about, you know, quantums and quantities. Do you have that number to inform our local plan deliberations?
So absolutely, and I think that is the bit that Trevor, as part of all the strategic planning bits, this piece of 2022 work, which I think we've already seen those indicative figures for, it's just going through that final bit of sign off, and I think that detail about the where is coming in early 2022. But from our point of view in affordable, I don't quite want to say every single market town in Norfolk, but there is a massive need. We are on the back foot at the moment in terms of housing options. So every district could sink 2 or 3 schemes in the affordable ones in the next 10 years easily.
Thank you for that. And remember, it's not just about providing new accommodation, important though that is. When Granny is rattling around in a 5-bed house and downsizes to somewhere that she wants to go to in a quality sort of way, it releases a 5-bed house for a growing family, and that's an important part of the economic offer. Yeah. Here in Norfolk. Good. Well, Jessamy, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We had a good knock around there for 20 minutes or so. lot of consensus. Trevor's going to bring us some papers later on with some numbers, so we'll bring this one under review. Great.
Thank you.
Nicely teed up. Thank you. Right, Trevor, you're next up. Agenda item under 5 on the DURAMs. This has been knocking around for a while, but I think we've probably got there, haven't we?
I think we are certainly making progress. So we've got a few things to do. So I'll quickly run through my paper that was sent out as part of the paperwork for this meeting. I won't plan on going over the background because I think we've covered that in numerous previous meetings, but I think I just want to quickly run through the 3 key streams that we've got outstanding with this work. So firstly, we've been trying to get a agreed wording for a county-wide statement of common ground between all local planning authorities and Natural England. I think we've got now some words that we're all agreed on from a local planning perspective. So the next steps on that will be to obviously pass that to Natural England and see if we can get their agreement to the words too. So that's still underway, but hopefully we've made some progress on that. Secondly, we held the workshop about a month ago now, where we discussed some options around sort of the governance arrangements for this work. We said at the time we would try and create something which was similar to the Great Norwich Sill system. So my paper sets out some proposals which I think we had support for at the workshop. This sets out the structure similar to Sill, as I said, with a board, and the board will agree the annual programme of projects and will oversee the delivery of the mitigation required for the RAMs. Similar to Sill, there'll be a delivery officer which will be employed to oversee the work of the group, and they'll bring forward projects for the programme, agree the programme with the board, oversee the implementation of the programme and monitor its success. At the workshop, we talked about some options for hosting the delivery officer, and I think there was reasonable support for the idea of county council being the host. So we're now looking at the various things that we need to put in place, things like job descriptions, specifications, things like that, so that we are ready to go when we're at the point where we can actually employ a delivery officer. Obviously, at the moment, we wouldn't do that until the tariff is fully in place, and obviously we have an appropriately sized fund to allow them to be employed. Finally, the third piece of the jigsaw is the RAMS mitigation package, and the fact we want to review that in more detail. So at the workshop, again, I set out a number of sort of key principles that we're looking to follow. And just I've highlighted those in the report that I sent out, but the key thing is that we're looking to review in detail all the individual Natura 2000 sites that we have within Norfolk, identify the degree of intervention needed at each of those, work with the site managers and landowners to identify and prioritise those projects, maximise the use of the existing resource at those sites that was already in place, and look to prioritise capital projects over revenue where practical. So officers at the moment are currently looking at the best way to complete this RAMS review project to make sure we get the best outcomes against that brief. So that's where we are at the moment. Still plenty to do, but we are making progress with that work.
Good. Well, this feels like it's been hanging around for a while, but I do think we've got there. I think the thing you could have said, Trevor, and didn't, is that having established the best estimate of the quantum of cost, at this best estimate stage, we're all going to be invited to raise £185 something 70 pence per new dwelling house, and a tourist accommodation counts for a third of one of those. So there's a for qualifying development, all of us start to raise the cash by 31st of March. And then immediately enter into this sort of review to make sure that the governance and the action plan, revenue capital and so forth, which we've all discussed, is going to crack on as soon as possible. At the last meeting, you indicated that the cost of the review would be something in the region of 30,000, I seem to recall. Is that still your best estimate? And or on the basis that we were doing some other work anyway, were we able to kill two birds with one stone and reduce that cost?
Yeah, just a couple of points. On your first point around the tariff, there are a couple of local authorities that would like to have the statement of common ground in place before they implement it. So yes, we are aiming to try and get it in place before the 31st of March, as you indicated, but that would be subject to a good turnaround time from Natural England in terms of getting the statement of common ground agreed. But if we get a good response from them quite quickly in the new year, then hopefully, yes, that is the plan. In terms of your other point, on further investigation of the work we were hoping to do with the county council, I think there's a general view from officers that we would like to put the work out to tender to make sure it's a transparent process, and to also sort of engage with other interested parties to see that we get the best picture of this piece of work and how it can be best delivered. So whilst we're not ruling anything out at the moment, I think there is a proposal to go out to tender for the piece of work and then take in responses and look to see who can provide that best offer. That might possibly impact the cost of that work. So we may possibly need to go above the figure you quoted, but we'll obviously provide more detail when we know where we stand on that front.
Well, bearing in mind that all the research work has been done and is uncontested, it's just the action plan that remains. We heard last time from the gentleman from the county council how they're doing a lot of this work anyway. So what?
Yes, it certainly is related to things like nature recovery strategies, which are being put in place as part of the Environment Bill. But I think there was some concerns around the suitability of the consultant they're using. They basically haven't had any experience of delivering similar studies around GI mitigation. And I think it's important, whilst all the background work has been done, I think the element that we lacked was, and this has been requested previously, is the detail behind the specific sites. So there is a degree of work that's required to look in detail with the site owners and the landowners to understand the needs of each site and to pick out where we can work with existing resource and where we can deliver capital projects to be most effective. So there is still a piece of work to do there. But as you say, I mean, much of the background work is already in place, but we want to just make sure that we've got that level of detail that everyone's comfortable with.
Okay. So next steps. I'm not seeing any questions. So next steps, we're being invited to take this through as planning authority through our cabinets. Presumably, I'm asking January, February time.
Yeah, as I said, there's a couple of local authorities that just want that statement of common ground all agreed and in place before they want to do that. But certainly the hope is that we can get it through every local authority by the end of March, if at all possible.
Okay. Right, any comments from anybody? I'm not seeing any.
Yes, John, the February meetings are usually just for budget, so I think you can knock that one out. So you're going to have to be January or March.
Well, it would go through cabinet, I believe, wouldn't it? Would it have to go through council, Trevor?
I think every authority has got slightly different views as to what they want to do with it, so I can't really give you a standard picture. Some want to take it to committee, some are taking it to cabinets, I believe.
Okay, good. And the Broads Authority, which has microscopic housing demand, presumably they're going to chip in as well? Because they only have 12 dwelling houses a year or so.
We're planning to pay for this from the joint budget that we have for the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework. So obviously they contribute to that, so it will come out of that fund.
No, I was thinking about the tariff. So the Broads Authority has a target of 12 dwelling houses a year.
Yep. No, the Broads Authority will introduce the tariff. So on there, as you say, 13 properties a year, the tariff will be charged. Yeah, obviously, as long as they're within Norfolk and not within the Suffolk area.
Of course. Good. Okay. Well, I think after a lot of hashing around, we got there, and I'm pleased we have, because I think it was important that we had the approach of capital, which Yarmouth and King's Lynn already have. It's important that we satisfy ourselves that there's, the governance is right, and that we can be assured that all 40 sites, are taken into account in a way that wasn't before. And naturally, and this is a point I think you've made, Graham, it's really important that those people who pay the tariff, that is builders and developers, can see that we're taking this seriously, and it's not just sort of fluffing up our own bureaucracies or whatever. And I'd also like to think that we've now got a better chance of working with the RSPB, Norfolk Wildlife Trust, even the Broads, so rather than double up and add value to their efforts rather than compete with them. So that's another good thing. So I think we got there. Thank you. Good. Happy days. Right, what's next one on the agenda? Next one, we've got the work programme. Over to you, Trevor. Again.
Yes. So normally every year, normally at the forum in October, we set out the proposals for the county-wide joint working for the next financial year. Obviously, this year's been a little bit different because there's been some uncertainty about the government white paper on planning. However, it's clear at the moment that there's likely to be a rethink on this, and that there's large uncertainty around what those plans will be now. So because of this, we're in a position where we can see that there's still significant value in continuing with the joint work programme into the next financial year, particularly as we've got a number of pieces of work which are not going to be complete by that point. We'll have the implementation of the RAMs, as we've just suggested, and we'll have the review of the mitigation package, which will go beyond the end of this financial year. But there's also other strategic work which is underway at the moment. All of that's listed out in my report, but just to pick out on a few specific ones, obviously we've just talked about Transport East work and obviously their draft strategy. We also have draft strategies coming in the new year from Water Resources East and the Norfolk Water Strategy as well. There's also considerable work now underway for the Norfolk Climate Change Partnership. They've recently received government funding for some work that they want to do, and there's planned to get dedicated resource for this project as well. Work that we are doing, which also needs to be complete beyond the end of the financial year, includes the review of the health protocol. So there's been some considerable changes in the structure of the NHS over the last year or so, and we're looking to review the health protocol we set up a number of years ago to make sure it still fits with the way they're structured. And we also want to put a stronger emphasis on sort of ill health provision and the key principles around how we can support that from a planning perspective. There's also a number of other pieces of work which potentially might need to be completed in the next financial year. Recently, the local government association in East Anglia or East of England has said that they're no longer keeping up to date the East of England forecast model. This is particularly used by local districts for employment and job information and forecasts for future employment growth. So we need to look at how we can potentially replace that and whether we work with neighbouring authorities and maybe the LEP in producing something we can all use together. There's still obviously at the moment the requirement to keep the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework up to date. And obviously there's local plans coming forward in the future. So we will need to make a decision soon about whether we start a review of that, given the fact it normally takes about 18 months to review that document. And there may be a need to keep something in place beyond that, once we obviously hear more from the government in terms of their proposals around sort of strategic planning. So all of this sort of wrapped up means that we feel there's a significant benefit in keeping this programme going and keeping the existing resource in place. So we're also looking for, for confirmation that we can continue with the existing sort of funding programme which is a £10,000 contribution from each local authority going forward, with 5 from the Broads.
Good. So that's the overarching proposal. I mean, I'm bound to say that if we did all this ourselves, it would cost us more. So there is a value for money point here, and also not falling between the cracks. So on that simple proposition, does anybody disagree with the fact we should just carry on, roll the dice for another year? Good. Well, no one's indicated, so I think you can take that as there. So that's, in essence, that's probably £75,000 cash from the districts, and then the county pays for Neenan and colleagues. So that's good. So of that £75,000, there's quite a smorgasbord in paragraph 3, 7, 6, 5, of all the things we're going to do. How are we going to work out what we're going to prioritise?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment around exactly what we need to do next year. And when we hear more about the planning white paper, we can prioritise work much more effectively. But the key things that we know we must do are obviously the GI RAMS work that we talked about previously. We need to do the health protocol process. Obviously, health is a key priority for everyone. And making sure that we've got that best engagement with the NHS and the associated partners. Beyond that, we really need to understand where the government plan to go with the planning and strategic planning going forward, and whether we can meet the needs of any requirements that it sets out with the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework document as it currently exists.
Okay. Well, so if the GRAMs and the health one are the top priorities, I think nobody would deny that. All I will say is there's a draft health protocol, which when we used for the first time in South Norfolk in September, turned out to be an unmitigated disaster, because a developer was looking for an uplift in value, which was worth about £7 million to him. And by applying the tariff, he only had to pay 150 grand. Well, that, so I think it needs a significantly greater amount of input from the planning authorities than just asking, the health service, well, what's a reasonable sum?
Going into the freezer. I think we've lost him. Can everybody else hear me?
We can hear you, Graham. Do you want to step in?
Yeah.
Just seeing that John's frozen out there. And I couldn't possibly speak. Here he comes. He's gone onto his phone.
I'm not sure what happened there.
You froze out, John. You just froze up on the screen.
Yeah, my internet at home is gone, so I'm on a mobile phone now. So there we go. Well, there we are. I thought we just probably need to do some work there. So, are you going to bring forward more detailed proposals now the budget envelope is secure to the next meeting, Trevor?
We can do, but as I say, I mean, it's very difficult to finalise things until we know what the government's plans are around the planning white paper. Obviously, the key decision will be whether we update the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework again, and subject to any understanding about what might be required around that. It might be a significant change, or it might be quite a small change in terms of what's required. So it's going to be very difficult until we get that understanding from the government to provide too much more detail. If we find that we're not going to get any announcements for the foreseeable future, we'll obviously need to probably update the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework for some of the local plans that are coming forward in a year or so. Sorry, you're on mute.
You're on mute, John.
So I'd characterise their soldier on with GIRAMs and health and mark time on everything else till the landscape becomes clearer. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's very much what we need to do, because there's so much uncertainty about duty to cooperate and whether it's going to get abolished. So,
okay, there we are. Okay, so is that a acceptable way forward? Bring forward some lovely. Thank you for that. Local plan update. I mean, we've got the paper. Should we just take that as read, or do you want to comment on it?
I'm comfortable with taking it as read, John. I think everybody's read their own element of it.
All I'll note is that in Greater Norwich, we're due to have our planning inspection in February. It's not a snag, but there's issues over the provision of 20 gypsy and traveller site pitches, and so that we're having to sort of do a bit of fancy footwork on that, and that may introduce a modest delay. But otherwise, I think we're all on target there. Good.
I think it's good you put your back garden forward, John.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just thought, you know, well, I'm not going to make a snide remark on that one. It's just, but there we are. Good. Okay. Right. AOB. Nina, over to you.
John, you've got an update. Cameron from Suffolk is still on the line.
Oh, sorry, neighbouring. Cameron, I didn't realise. I didn't mean to overlook you. It's just you haven't been here for a couple of times, so here we are. Over to you.
Right, all right. Can you see and hear me all right? My connection
Yep,
been a
we've got
bit
that.
fuzzy. You can. Okay, great. Just a quick update. So related to what you were hearing about with Transport East earlier, National Highways have are currently doing a consultation on an important junction of the A14, junction 55, which is just to the west of Ipswich. So local authorities in Suffolk have been inputting to that consultation. In terms of local plans for Ipswich, there isn't really much of an update from last time. We're still waiting on an inspector's report from their examination. East Suffolk is quite similar because they have adopted local plans. However, they are currently consulting on new sill charging rates across their authority. And West Suffolk are still working towards a preferred options draft to consult on in March, I believe, is their aim. Baber and Mid Suffolk are currently undergoing examination. However, that's been placed on hold. The inspectors during hearings in November grew concerned with some inconsistencies in the site selection and allocation process, and are worried that some sites may have been unreasonably excluded from the plan. There was some back and forth between the district councils and the inspector, which I won't go into unless you want me to. But the sort of the outcome of it is at the moment that the inspectors are suggesting that the district councils carry on with the local plan examination, but remove the spatial distribution and site allocation policies. So basically just leaving it as a part 1 local plan with strategic priorities and development management policies, and then start development on a part 2 local plan, which would include the spatial distribution and housing allocations, including gypsies and travellers. There is also a few other policy issues that would be addressed in that part 2 as well. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, I think on the gypsy and traveller one, which does appear from what you've said, Cameron, to be a common issue across all of us, we had in our own South Norfolk Council performance monitoring reports, not a single unlawful encampment was noted anywhere in our district in the entirety of the travelling season this year. And remember, we weren't locked down at that point. So I think whilst there has been quite a cottage industry develop, to try and identify and magnify and demonstrate quite significantly large numbers of the need for traveller sites and so forth, the market is telling us that actually we are in danger of overshooting. That's not an invitation for everyone to come and park illegally in South Norfolk, obviously. But the fact is that the propensity to travel appears to be getting less. And that is something which I think we're all going to have to review at some stage, the needs, because I sense we're at risk of overshooting.
I'm not quite sure what the details of the Gypsy and Traveller sites are in Baber and Mid Suffolk. Just that the inspector was quite clear that their evidence base needed reviewing, and it might say something similar to what you're saying there. It might come out with something different, but I'm afraid I don't know the details.
Good. Well, there we are. I think we've come to the end. Lenan, you were just about to tell us what the date for the next meeting was.
Yeah, it's some point in January. I'm just about to canvass a date for you.
Okay, that's good. So Tim Jickles, you're new man here, replacing I can't remember her first name now.
Melanie
Digaliano. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I was planning to just sit quietly and see all this in action, but I think it's impressive. I think this duty to cooperate is really important, and I'm pleased to see a lively discussion. It's much of this around areas I know very little about. I don't yet need aging accommodation for older people isn't my issue yet, but it's been very interesting. Thank you very much.
Good, you're welcome. Good. Well, on that positive note, I wish you all a happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year. A happy lockdown, I suppose we ought to say. Let's hope not. And we'll see you all in the new year. Thank you for your attendance. And we finished.
Happy Christmas to you too,
40 minutes early, which is great. Bye.
Fine.
Bye.